Namaste and welcome to Bharat Vichar. Today we are again joined by Maj Gen Harsha Kakar, Indian Army retired. General Kakar sir, thank you for coming on Bharat Vichar sir and Happy New Year to you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Uh, Sir, this interview comes just days after the Kashmiri exodus happened 32 years ago, but a lot has changed. So, so you were a serving officer back then, sir. So I'm just gonna throw this at you. Uh, what was happening during that time when attacks were happening almost on a daily basis? So I just wanted the perspective of a military man who was there, if not during 32 years ago, but fought and saw how we lost so many of our men and civilians 32 years ago, sir. If you could shed some light on that, sir.
See, 32 years ago, when the initial militancy took off or the terrorism took off in J&K, we were not prepared. The nation was not prepared. The LOC was not fenced. We never had the Rashtriya Rifles. We never had dedicated forces for internal security. The responsibility rested with the state police. You've also got to remember a large part of the Indian army was involved in Sri Lanka at the same time. So the focus then was Sri Lanka. Now, this suddenly took off before you could react, before you could get things moving. The exodus took place. It was after that things started getting reorganized. Additional forces came in initially for temporary phase to handle the growing terrorism. Then the Rashtriya Rifles were slowly raised, and they became the backbone of success, which is the main reason why we've been able to achieve the success. Then came the fencing along the LOC, which controlled infiltration, coordinated grids. A whole lot of things kept taking place, which is what changed the scenario. But when it happened, it came out of the blue. There was lack of preparation. The police forces that were made responsible did not have the ability. And most of all, like I said, was the involvement in Sri Lanka. The emphasis was there. And by the time you shifted emphasis, I guess the damage had been done. But after that, which is why we say that it will not happen again, because you are now set for handling it and you're in a position to handle it.
Uh, Staying with Kashmir, the news reports that the small arms left by America, the M1 carbines and 6 or guns, handguns, which are very very effective, which our special forces uses, and we recently also were informed that the Jammu and Kashmir police will now have the 6 or assault rifle. Firepower matters in such situations. So what kind of if I may, if I'm using the term correctly, don't you think this is a bit of a force multiplier, bringing in American weapons into Kashmir and via Pakistan? And are they not concerned that America might just raise this as an issue that, okay, we left behind it in Afghanistan, why is it finding its way in Kashmir? So if you could throw some light on that, sir.
Firstly, it is not the gun, it's the man behind the gun that counts. So unless you're trained to operate in a particular environment against a particular structure or force, which is what our forces there are trained to operate, things will be different. That's number one. Secondly, there is no doubt that weapons which were left behind in Afghanistan have landed up not only in Pakistan or in India, they would also be possibly landing up in some of the Central Asian republics with the Islamic militants who are moving around. For the US to raise its concern on Pakistan may not happen, because once it's left behind, where it moves, how it moves, and everybody knows that along the Pakistan Afghanistan belt, weapons are sold in the open market the way vegetables are sold in India. You have markets that are openly displaying and selling weapons, and no one is bothered to do anything about it. That's the sort of atmosphere that exists in some parts. Within Afghanistan, with the Taliban not having any funds, one way out to gain money is to sell weapons. Possibly even the American Humvees would now be in Pakistan and painted with Pak Army colors. So that is something that is not likely to be questioned. But definitely holding the weapon does give him additional firepower. But it doesn't change the scenario because of the sort of training that our forces undergo. That makes a world of a difference. And if it was only to consider weapons, then it would be a world of a difference. You only have to buy the latest and deploy it, and you're supposed to be capable. But it's not that. It's the level you're trained to handle it, the manner you handle it, the sort of drills that you go through that makes a difference.
So basically, if an Indian Army soldier has been using the NSAS rifle or the AK-47 assault rifle, suddenly, if he's given this assault rifle, 6-SAR assault rifle or M1 carbine, they will have to go through a period of training, sir, on that, how to handle that weapon.
Not, I wouldn't say a period of training. What you would need to go through is how do you utilize the weapon. That is in the firing ranges, where you will be trained to go through the firing of the weapon. What are the faults that come in with the weapon? Then, considering the range, there may be some amount of change in tactics because whenever you're operating as teams and you're setting up cordons, the question is the range of the weapon and the possible spread of the round is what you will, which will bring about some changes in the manner in which you operate. Not much, but there is no doubt that something, and of course, a reasonable amount of time will have to be spent on the firing range for him to master the weapon.
So even if it is in the hands of terrorists, one would require a degree of expertise to handle such a weapon.
Not
So
not only the weapon. You see, after all, if you have to operate, you have to be trained to operate. The manner in which you're supposed to move. Now, that sort of a training between a terrorist and a regular army is a world apart.
well, so that's certainly good to know. And I believe we also have received some sniper rifles, so that would come in handy. Moving to next question, sir. It seems the chicken has come home to roost. There was a bomb blast in Lahore. I mean, I'm not taking any joy from that, unlike our friends across uh, the fence in Pakistan. Whenever they take joy in our sadness. But do you think the militancy has finally reached Lahore, the Punjab, the heart of Pakistan? Or I personally feel that this might have been also a false flag. I mean, it's a conspiracy theory, but Bajwa wants a third term. It's funny when a general says that I want a second term or a third term. I mean, in India, generals simply, when their time comes, they retire and just leave. But Bajwa wants another 3 years. So, sir, this attack, how much it would have shaken the Pakistan military, because now it has come to Punjab.
See, when you said general's turn comes to retire, they just leave. It's not leave; they just fade away. Uh, Generals only fade away, right?
Douglas
Okay.
MacArthur said that.
Now when you come down to this part, the fact is, you see, earlier, if you just look a few days back, there was an attack in Islamabad. Two police people were killed, and it was people like Fawad Chowdhury and Sheikh Rashid who said that terrorism has come to Islamabad, and the claim for that was made by the TTP. The Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan took the responsibility. The attack in Karachi, the responsibility was taken by the Baluch. So now what is happening is these two groups, I mean, you got the TTP on one side, which is in the NWFP or the Northwest Frontier Province or Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Waziristan area. And then in Balochistan, you've got the Baluch. Now, both of them are spreading their tentacles. Both of them are expanding the areas in which they operate. This is not a good sign within Pak. For any nation, when it spreads internally, it actually adds on to pressure on the security agencies, which is the police or the rangers or whatever they've got. But it's not a good sign in the long term. And I guess that is one of the reasons what they need to be careful about. And said and done, insecurity in Pak in the long term is also an issue which concerns us, because insecurity in Pak implies lack of control by the state, and that adds on to the sort of hatred, because then they shift everything towards the towards terrorism to try and keep things on the other side. So, but the fact is that it is getting difficult for them. They have absolutely missed ruled the country, the current government. There is economic disparity, there is inflation at unbelievable levels, the economy is sinking, and you've not been able to win over the groups that are operating against you because you continue exploiting the regions. So it's just getting back to us.
Absolutely, sir. I could not agree more. But now, sir, we are going to move to the topic at hand. Pakistan recently released its national security strategy. Uh, from 1,000-year war and 1,000 cuts, 100 years of peace with India, and that too conditional, I would say, because I think the Kashmir is still the caveat. It's still there. They simply can't just let go of Kashmir in this 100 years of peace. I don't know how's that going to work out. And so you had written a very good article uh, yesterday. I read that yesterday, and in that you mentioned that Pakistan has always somehow managed never to take advantage of its geolocation the right way. I mean, I'm a member of CETO, I'm a member of CENTO. I can keep an eye on Russia, give me weapons, give me radars, give me fighter planes. But you know, you mentioned something about an oil pipeline, sir. I don't. I've read the article, but I want you to explain why Pakistan could could never take advantage of its geolocation, I personally feel that it could have been the South Korea of say Central Asia in a sense. Pakistan falls on the foothills of Central Asia. It would have been the South Korea of Central Asia of all the countries. Sir, please.
See, firstly, for a country to take out a national security policy or uh, or a national security strategy, as they term it, the country has to have an independent foreign and economic policy. When you are dependent on China and world bodies as well as the Middle East for loans, your economic and foreign policies are dependent on these organizations or these countries. You go against them, they withdraw the loans. They control your purse strings, they automatically control your foreign policy. Imran's inability to attend the democracy summit and wherever else the West was involved is because China did not want him to. So despite all his attempts of trying to get close to the US, he can't because China is holding the leash. And he can't bark without China's permission. Economically, the Saudis have given that loan with such riders that no country's ever had it before. You miss one world repayment and the loan comes back. We can reclaim it anytime with 72 hours notice. So that means you can't go against anything which impacts the Saudis. The IMF dictates your economic policies. Today you're forced to pass a mini budget. You're supposed to give absolute independence to State Bank of Pakistan. They are deciding what should be your rate, such that you've even placed taxes on condoms, which no country in the world has ever done. All right. And the Pak opposition says with Imran Khan as the prime minister, you're still taxing condoms. It's surprising. But that's the state the country is in. Now, if you come down to the location, the Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India pipeline has been in discussion for a long time. Iran, Pakistan, India pipeline going further on to maybe Bangladesh or wherever, or possibly even Nepal, could have tapped a large number of areas, had been in discussion for a long time. For India to access Central Asia, the best possible route would have been Pakistan and on to, if Afghanistan is in trouble, you could still go through from there. The fact is, anyone uses their space for anything, you get funds. The pipeline transits through, you are paid for everything that goes through. The income is fixed. Now, availability of road space. In fact, the CPEC, in which case would have been a major boost because India would have used the CPEC. And every vehicle that goes would have paid Pakistan. Today, there is no one using the CPEC. For China, it's free. So Pakistan is paying for China's use. They're not using, I mean, what use have the local parks got? So basically, had they not had that sort of Kashmir fixation or that anti-India fixation, which again is not the cause of the nation, but it's the cause of the army because that is what gave the army the power. It created a feeling within Pakistan that India seeks to break Pakistan. Whereas India has always wanted a stable Pakistan for talks because you can't talk with a country which is unstable. But you've created that sort of structure, you've created that as part of history. If you read Pakistan history books, a class 5 student is taught that India seeks to break us into parts, so we must stand together as one. Now, when you've done that, you've created that sort of a bias, so how can you permit it? Now, today, had they permitted Indian trucks to go through, possibly there might have been a term of agreement for some amount of payment for Afghanistan. With the riders that you put, we might possibly take the Iran offer and move it through Iran. So who gets the money? Iran. Now, you've actually not been able to exploit what is there with you. And had that happened, the possibly surplus electricity which the CPEC would create now in Pakistan could have flown off, or could have come down to India, and it could have been a major deal. Economically, they would have gained a lot. Hey, look at the way when their cotton industry was going down, they wanted to purchase cotton from India. They put a barrier that not as long as the current government is there. We will not purchase from India until you roll back Article 370. So what are you doing? I mean, you say our policy is geoeconomics, but you're not using economics in the right manner. So how is your policy geoeconomics? It's actually an absolute confusion. I don't know whether this national security strategy is a document for the sake of a document, or it is Bajwa doctrine being recast, because in March last year, almost a year before the national security, he already spoke of geoeconomics.
I think, sir, Pakistan suffers from a serious case of cognitive dissonance. I mean, two thoughts. They know that what they are doing is wrong, but they just keep doing that over and over. And basically, I think that for them, the problem is for the next guy who comes and takes over. If I'm not mistaken, one of the riders Saudi Arabia had put was that no bad talk about my country. I think Imran Khan had gotten out of line with Saudi Arabia after he drove the Saudi prince, who is probably going to be the Saudi king anytime. His father is not in the best of condition. And for the first time in Saudi Arabia, Ibn Saud's sons will not be the rulers, and a third generation, technically a third generation, would become the ruler of Saudi Arabia. That would put a lot of problem inside that kingdom, and I don't know how things are going to go there. And there's a lot of changes also happening in Saudi Arabia. They have come a lot closer to Israel. Uh, Sir, in that regard, what was it? What was going through your head when you first read that? Or now Israel has diplomatic relationship with UAE. It already had with Egypt back in 1980-81 when Anwar Sadat signed that, came to Israel and he agreed for peace. And Israel left the Sinai, and there was diplomatic relationship. Jordan has diplomatic relationship, but now Saudi Arabia is so close to Israel, and they are allowing them their airspace. And here is Pakistan, which keeps saying that no, we will not recognize Israel. And what were your thought process when that happened for Israel? I mean, you would have worked maybe with some Israeli,
See,
officers also.
you see, the issue is the Middle East nations. The UAE has already signed the agreement. Now, the Middle East nations have realized that a larger threat is within Iran, the way Turkey is attempting to overthrow the caliphate, terrorism rising from Yemen, possibly even flowing out from Pakistan, Afghanistan. The threat is here. Israel is not a threat to the Saudis or the UAE. For Israel, it is Iran. Saudis and UAE, the threat is Iran. Right. So enemy is my friend. The same way for Pak and China. Otherwise, there's no logic between Pak and China being friends, except the fact that both are enemies of India. Now, and the Saudis have realized that the Israelis don't want to overthrow the current rulership in Saudi. They're not interested in Saudi or UAE to overthrow the rulership. What they're looking for cordial relations, sharing of input, sharing of intelligence, and enhancing ties, mainly economic ties. So that is logical. As far as Pakistan is concerned, for 70 years you've taught crap. For us, it's Palestine and Kashmir. We cannot look beyond Palestine and Kashmir. Now you can't go and change your policy overnight. There have been reports, quite a lot of them unofficial, but possibly all true, of back channel conversations between the between Pak and Israel. But one doesn't know that. The fact is, they also realize that, and that's why Israel is not bothered as far as Pakistan is concerned. At one time, yes, it was a concern for the Islamic bomb, but when they realized that it's not going to go beyond Pakistan because the US assured them, since then they've stepped back. And now the concern is for Iran to have a bomb. For them, it's a matter of national security. So, as far as Pak is concerned, it's stupidity for them to interfere in the Israel issue, but it makes no sense. But then that has been their policy. You harp for 70 years, now you come to a state where you can't pull back. And that is what is their situation, whether it's Kashmir, whether it's Palestine. That is why the stupid NSS, after the NSS, the spokesperson stated that we'd like to have talks with India, but not with the current government. Then what talks with India?
No, that old saying in Hindi, or that begane ki shadi mein Abdullah Diwana. Maybe I got that wrong. I mean, they poke their nose in other people's business. Anyway, sir, Pakistan. Now we're going to move to from Pakistan to Pakistan's master, China, and there's been a lot of you know. Attack on social media by China. They are using, uh, and they are, unfortunately they have some proxies in India. But then I suppose that's democracy, and they will say that we have every right to, raise our concerns and all. And I'm just going through all their social media exchanges, especially from that disgraced, that person who betrayed the Tiananmen Square, his comrades. I mean, it's the replies are practically infantile. It's like sophomoric. Something a 5-year-old would say in a schoolyard, like "Mere papa mujhse zyada strong." I mean, it doesn't even make sense, and they think that it's going to affect India in any way, or is it affecting India in some way?
See, firstly, you got to realize that the internal Chinese social media, that is Weibo, is blocked from the world. So nobody else can intervene. So what they do is they project their thoughts to the global times, as well as through full page advertisements in Indian newspapers. I'm talking of India specific. And a number of people who are pro-China publishing articles online and in newspapers or magazines on supporting Chinese views. Their hope is to project China as a power, or to apply pressure on the government of India not to oppose the Chinese views, and to consider China as a power it's better to stay off from than to deal with. But it doesn't make sense, because as far as we are concerned, we made it very clear that we can handle you guys. They're also aware. The fact is, they're not going to get into any military tangle. They know they've got into a tangle. Now it's getting difficult for them to untangle themselves, because now you're stuck, neither this side nor that side. You can't push forward, you pull back, you again face the brunt. China had never considered defense. Throughout our service, whenever you served on the LAC, we could never locate a single bunker on the Chinese side, because they knew Indian plans were defensive. Today, if you're building that bridge across the Pangong Tso and you're increasing troop construction, what are you doing? You suddenly realize that India is now capable of having your pants off. So now you're getting into a defensive scenario. Now, what are you trying to do? You're trying to play the game on the other side on Indians. We are this, we are that, we have that. That's what you're trying to do. But it's not going to work. But this is part of information warfare and it will carry on.
Right, sir. Recently, Siachen again reared its head. It was a very strategic location which India managed to capture with a lot of sacrifice. And we all remember how during the Manmohan Singh government, there were talks of leaving that, vacating that particular spot, and the army said absolutely not. So, sir, Siachen, its importance and why we must never give up that particular area, just as Israel will never give up the Golan Heights.
See, the question was what the army chief said. He says,
Yeah.
provided you clear it on the dotted line and you clear it as this is the IB. So, which meant you actually resolving Kashmir before you come to Siachen. One. Number two, if you agree to sign on the dotted line that this is the area where the deployment currently exists and this is the boundary, it's acceptable. The question is, once you've done that, you cannot back down. Okay, so you pull out of Siachen and you deploy at the base of Siachen, that's good enough because they can't touch it. But for us, yes, it is important because it separates both China and Pak, and you can't afford to let them collude. But the belief that if you vacate, they're going to come in, once you've cleared it on paper, there is no way you can break the rule. Okay, so that's got a different connotation. So what the chief said, but then that is something which Pak is unwilling to accept. That is what has been the attempted debate earlier. The attempted debate was where during Manmohan Singh it came out, it will become no man's land for both sides. That doesn't suit. That doesn't suit. What suits you is your clear line that this is where the deployment is, this is where India is, this is where we are. We will not budge forward, they will not budge forward. That is the difference. Now, under those
Actually, sir,
conditions,
yeah.
हाँ बोलो.
Actually, sir, a lot of people actually misconstrued the chief's statement. I mean, one has to read the statement carefully. He never said anything about conceding, and suddenly,
No,
everyone went just
no, no,
dog nuts that, oh, no, 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 something is happening. Modi government. Anyway, it's
nothing.
political, but I don't think any
Correct.
army chief worth his salt would
No,
ever back down from
that's what
Kargil.
that's what he said. That's why he said. He says you sign on the dotted line. This is where the deployment is. You don't come forward. We don't go forward.
Uh,
That is something they're not going to do.
No, Pakistan won't because they know that once
Ah.
they sign any agreement, they are going to be in a lot of trouble.
As it is,
Lastly,
you
sir,
see,
you
they are
were,
nowhere on the glacier. They're nowhere on
yeah,
the
no.
glacier. They're well below the glacier.
Lastly, sir, you were in the artillery. I, a civilian, would always used to think that okay, the enemy is 20 kilometers away. This is the range, and then adjust the gun accordingly and fire. I read an article written by General Shankar, Lieutenant General Shankar, former DGMO artillery, and I was surprised. I mean, an artillery officer also has to be sort of like a meteorologist. You have to know the temperature, I mean, so many technicalities. I mean, when he wrote about the air temperature, the moisture, the Earth's rotation. I mean, for me, it was like an eye opener. I read that article, so I was just wanted, since I'm talking to an artillery officer. I mean, you're firing a very powerful gun, and so much goes into firing one shell, so much planning, so much thought process goes into it, sir. How it is used in, say, a desert, or say in Punjab and in the higher altitudes of Himalayas.
See, what happens is you've got different temperature settings. You've got certain sort of tables which give you data. These have been compiled over years and after a lot of experimental firing. You use the tables, you use actual data available to you from Met. You've got actual temperature which you take at the time of the day. And then also, if you have the opportunity, you do a shoot to look at the actual difference between where the round should be and where it is. which is what then you transfer to the rest of the firing. Okay, so that is what you have to do. So that's what you do. The fact is that when you fire a round, remember, you fired it from the gun. The question is the external forces and the internal forces they act on it is something which comes to you, from a lot of experimental firing and inputs. So once you have that, today a lot of it is calculated electronically. That makes firing far more accurate. And today, possibly after the first round, wherever it's landed, you're able to adjust it to where you want by using the correct measurement methods that are available to you, and you can straight away engage. In case it's out of sight, you use drones, you use other means which help you to engage. The level of accuracy today has improved drastically, especially because you've been able to computerize a large amount of the variables which otherwise you were trying to do manually.
I mean, when I read that article, I was completely, blown away. I mean, like, oh, so much of science actually goes into it. It's not like just, take the gun there and just, fire. There is more to it. I mean, I'm not a weapons expert. I was in the NCC. I have fired a point, I think point 303 rifle. They gave us a point 303 rifle to
4.303.
fire. Yeah, in the NCC, quite a, the uh, recoil was quite good, but that is the only experience I have of ever firing a gun. And artillery is a totally different piece. Now, sir, last question: where do you see the strategic or tactical use of artillery in these modern times, where you have drones that can target? Because nowadays artillery is all about shoot and scoot. You fire some rounds and then you walk away. How do you view the future of artillery, sir?
A drone can fire one round, two rounds, that's its capability. An RT can fire a barrage. Right? If you fire a rocket regiment, one rocket battery of 6 rockets firing one round each, that is 240 rounds, can devastate an area of 1.8 to 1.8 kilometers. Now the question is the power that you have in the artillery shell. I mean, you've got drones, but a drone's fire one or two, it has to go back. That's its carrying capacity. You look at the quantum of artillery fire. Each gun carries 100 rounds along with it whenever it moves. 50 rounds are available to it just behind. One gun, and if you're looking at a regiment of 18 guns, 18 into 100, 1800 rounds are there on the gun. Another 50 rounds per gun. That's another 900 rounds. You look at the amount
Yeah.
of area you can hit and the cause of damage you can create. Artillery is for mass employment. You're using drones for specific targeting. When you have to hit a company locality, you can't use a drone. You're going to use artillery. When you have to hit a camp, you can't use a drone because the drone will knock down one building, but you've got to use artillery to knock down the entire structures. Okay, the fire is devastating, the damage is immense. It breaks the individual who's sitting in the defenses.
Anyway, sir, I believe a lot of work is being going on in artillery to fire rounds that can hit targets even at 90 kilometers per hour. I mean, that is something which did we have, are they operational right now, sir, or it's still in
See, we've
experimental
got a
phase?
whole lot. You've got a whole lot. I mean, you've got Pinaka, you've got Smersh, you've got a whole lot of weapon systems that are there with varying ranges. Even the missiles are with the artillery. Okay,
Okay, sir. Okay.
basically, what you've got is the ability from a short range onto keep looking at it. Anything above. Pinaka, Smersh earlier, though they've also gone up to 90 kilometers now. So
Yeah. Uh, Well, sir, with that, I think we'll come to an end of this part of Bharat Vichar. Thank you very much. We discussed quite a few things, General Kakkar, and I just want to say one thing. I said that generals in India walk away. You said they just fade away. I promise you that a platform like these would never allow you to fade away. We will still always try to, get you if and when you are available, so that you can come and express your expert's view. You have served for so long for the country, and you are still serving even after by writing scholarly articles. Yesterday's article was very, very good. I'll be sharing that on social media platforms. And I just want to say, sir, that you, for the time being, will not be fading away. With that, sir, thank you for your service to our nation.
Thank you.
Jai Hind and Dhanyavad, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye bye.